If you believe that respect isn't earned by medals or titles but by sacrifice, by survival, by stories untold, then take a moment to like and subscribe. Because today, we remember a man whose silence spoke louder than most men's shouts. The West Brbridge Military Training Academy. Precision was king and pride walked the halls like it paid rent. Cadets strolled the marble corridors with their shoulders square, boots shined, and futures practically engraved in brass. They came from legacy families, armed with spotless records and egos polished as brightly as their belt buckles. They were being sculpted into leaders, at least on paper. And then there was him, the janitor. An old man in a gray custodial uniform with a slow gait and a bent back, pushing a broom long before the sun touched the campus. He had no nameplate, just a weathered badge and a fraying ball cap with the word retired stitched above a patch that no one bothered to identify. Most didn't give him a second glance. He moved like a shadow through their world, quiet, invisible, almost forgotten. Some cadets mocked him. Not all, but enough. Whispers followed him like echoes in those pristine halls. Sergeant Mop. One sneered, "Lose your way to the VA hospital, old man." Another chuckled, but he never answered. Not once. He just kept pushing that broom, steady and unshaken, as if their words passed right through him. They mistook his silence for shame, but it wasn't shame. It was experience. It was memory. It was something far deeper than they could understand. One morning, just days before the Academy's prestigious annual symposium, things reached a boiling point. In the cafeteria, as cadets buzzed over their breakfast, a particularly arrogant second-year named Landon, sharp uniform, sharper tongue, deliberately knocked his tray to the floor just as the old man passed by. Eggs, toast, juice scattered like debris after a failed mission. "Oops," Landon said with a smirk, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We've got a mess, soldier." Laughter erupted. The word soldier was spat like a joke. Still, the janitor said nothing. He simply bent down and began to clean, piece by piece, like nothing had happened. Others joined the disrespect. Crumpled napkins, coffee spills. One even tossed a banana peel in mock slapstick. And through it all, he worked quietly, methodically, like a man who had cleaned up worse, because he had. They didn't know what he'd seen, where he'd been. To them, he was background noise, a fixture with a mop in a building that celebrated stars and stripes but had forgotten the stories that built them. And no one asked about his limp, or why he paused at the wall of honor for just a little too long. That wall, lined with black and white portraits of war heroes, had one photo he always paused at: a young officer saluting amid a sandstorm, grit and wind swirling like the ghost of war itself. His gaze would rest there, steady, silent. Then he'd move on. That week, the disrespect escalated. Maybe it was nerves before the symposium. Maybe it was the pack mentality. Or maybe it's just easy to mock the quiet ones when no one tells you to stop. One night, someone left a fake promotion letter on his card, an application from a prank site for senior custodial commander, with skills listed as mopfu and advanced trash deployment. He folded it once, put it in his pocket, and kept cleaning. But what none of them knew, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that he never needed their validation. In distant lands, under impossible conditions, he had earned something far more sacred than their shallow approval: respect. Not the kind granted with applause, but the kind forged in fire, in silence, and in survival. While they slept, he remembered. While they laughed, he mourned. He remembered the names of every soldier who didn't come home. He remembered the feel of sand in his mouth under fire, and the silence that follows when the mission ends but the grief doesn't. He remembered maps, orders, call signs, the weight of leadership when every decision means someone might not make it back. But the Academy had forgotten. In its quest for excellence, it had left humility behind until the morning of the symposium. That day was circled on every cadet's calendar. The assembly hall was buzzing, medals shined, suits pressed, anticipation thick in the air. This year's keynote speaker was no less than General Marcus Denning, a 4-star legend known for black ops across 4 continents and for mentoring some of the finest officers in modern history. Everything had to be perfect inside. Cadets sat rigid with nerves. Outside, the janitor walked the hallway just like every other day. Same cart, same broom, same quiet, but today he walked slower. He paused at the corridor's end, adjusted the brim of his cap, and looked toward the assembly hall. Inside, the double doors swung open, and in walked General Denning. He had the presence of a man who'd not only read history, but written parts of it. The room snapped to attention. Salutes cracked. Cameras clicked. But instead of heading to the podium, the general kept walking straight toward the hallway, toward the janitor. Gasps swept through the crowd as the general stood before him and saluted, a full, formal salute. Then, calmly, Denning said, loud enough for the room to hear, "Sir, it's an honor to finally meet you in person." You could have heard a pin drop. The old man blinked, then, with the precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, returned the salute, and the room unraveled. General Denning turned to the crowd. "Before I begin," he said, "I need to recognize someone who shaped more lives than I ever could. A man whose leadership saved my life and 212 others during Operation Goliath." Murmurs rippled across the rows. "His name isn't carved in stone here, but it should be. You know him as the janitor. I knew him as Commander Elias Rohr." Time froze. Rohr, that name had echoed in briefing rooms and military folklore. Some thought it was myth. Others knew better. Landon, the cadet who had spilled the tray, sat frozen, color draining from his face. General Denning continued, "Sir, I've waited years for this. You sacrificed more than any man was ever asked to. And now, these cadets, our future, deserve to know who you are." Rohr didn't puff his chest. He didn't smile. He just nodded like he'd been waiting, not for recognition, but because the truth always finds its way out. "Would you speak to them?" the general asked. Elias looked across the room, at the cadets who mocked him, the instructors who allowed it, the walls that forgot him, and finally, he said, "I'll speak. Not for me, but for those who never came home." He stepped forward. No mic, no podium, just presence. "I've seen leaders fall not from weakness, but from arrogance. I came back not with medals in my suitcase, but ghosts in my chest. I returned not for glory, but to stay close to what mattered even if the world forgot me." He spoke softly. No drama, just truth, the kind they don't teach in manuals. He spoke of the unnamed, of sacrifice without spotlight, of what it means to lead when lives, not grades, are on the line. Tears welled in the corners of more than one cadet's eyes. Instructors shifted uncomfortably. Shame began to ripple through the ranks, and then he stopped. No applause, no bow, just silence, until Landon, the loudest, cockiest cadet of them all, stood up, spine straight with guilt. "Sir, I didn't know," he said, voice cracking. "That's no excuse. I'm sorry." Elias gave a simple nod. That was enough. Then another cadet stood, and another. Soon, every last person in the room, too. Future officers rose silently to their feet, not to clap, to salute. One by one, General Denning stepped aside, and in that moment, Elias Rohr, the man they called Janitor, wasn't just respected, he was remembered. He turned, without a word, and walked back down the corridor with his broom, like nothing had happened, but something had, because respect isn't about rank, or uniforms, or recognition. It's about how you carry yourself when no one's looking. How you treat those who carry the weight of sacrifice. So if you believe that no veteran should ever be forgotten, especially the quiet ones walking among us, like, share, and tell someone this story, because the world needs to remember heroes who don't speak, but whose lives still echo.